Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of You Are Loved. I'm really excited to bring you Stanley's story today. I have no doubt that it will encourage you and bring you hope, especially if you're feeling lost or broken or just looking for a word from the Lord. Before we jump into your story, Stanley, if you could sum up the testimony that we're about to hear in just a word or two or a sentence, what would you say?
I would probably have to say the one thing that describes my testimony the most would be the test that I've had to face throughout life, as well as I believe anybody else would have to face throughout life.
The test. Well, if you're watching and you feel like you've been going through a test and it's really challenging, then I encourage you to just watch the entire thing and see how God has worked in Stanley's life, because I have no doubt that he wants to do the same in yours. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Stanley. I'm 30 years old. I work for Fountain of Hope Ministries as a program director. I was born in Morristown, Tennessee. Kind of jumped around a lot as a child between Virginia, Tennessee, custody battles with my mom and dad and things of that nature.
When do you think that trauma first started for you in your life, other than the custody battles? What was the biggest hurdle that you had to overcome in your early life?
Violence, probably. So I can remember as a child growing up in Morristown, Jefferson City area, waking up in the middle of the nights to fist fights, strangers in the house, people I didn't know. Just random occurrences because of the lifestyle that the family that was around me was living. And at the time it didn't seem too much impactful, but now, 22 years later, I can think back and remember certain scenarios that went on. And that really made a lasting impact. But I think even now, abandonment issues had a lot to play with that as well. Because of the violence and the drugs that was in the home, my mother filed for custody of me when I was around 7 years old. And at this point in time, I didn't really remember or know who my mother was, because she had been out of the picture since I was a younger child. So she files for custody. My father goes to court. He fails a drug test, and she's awarded custody. And then it's like a sequence of events that didn't really have too much space in between them. The next thing I knew, I was in Virginia. So I'm away from the only family that I've hardly ever known, in another state. And I'm having to relearn them and who I am. And then I started to long for that father figure, because I was a daddy's boy growing up, and he wasn't there. My older brother, though, was. So looking up to him, I started to, hang out with him, go to the store with him. He's who I looked up to, so that's who I wanted to hang out with. That's who I wanted to be around with. And in doing so, in order to fit in, I started doing the same things that he was doing. Around the age of 8, we started smoking weed together.
Wow.
Which wasn't a big deal, or I felt like at the time, because it's just weed, right? Fast forward a couple years, I'm 13, and now we're drinking, we're smoking weed, and we're doing pills. And I'm in my early years of middle school. So it escalated quickly. 2 years later, by the time I'm 15, I was using and manufacturing methamphetamine with my uncle, who was, he's done his time on all that stuff, But the weed at 8 years old is what led into that, and what led into the weed was the abandonment issues that stemmed from, number one, not knowing my mother when I grew up, and number two, the only parent that I did know losing me. And I didn't know how to cope with that.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to cope with these things. So I went to the only thing that I knew of that was around me at that point in time, and that was drugs. Because while you were high or while you were intoxicated, whatever it was, you didn't have to feel that.
Right.
And not only that, but I was looking to fit in with my brother, and that's what he was doing. So that's what I chose to do, to try to fit in, to make myself look better in that image, I guess. Which may sound stupid to a lot of people, but when you're 13, 15 years old and your brother's in his mid-20s, you know, there's a gap there. So it escalated very quickly. So my freshman year of high school, I've now developed an actual hardcore drug habit. And I'm homeless in Virginia with my brother, living in tents and stuff of this nature. And this is a new life to me. Like I've never had to, at this point, go to sleep without a pillow, you know? So living in the streets and doing what we were doing was new to me, but it was exhilarating. And so one thing leads to another while we're in Virginia and doing these things. I go back to my uncle's home in Johnson City towards the end of the summer of my freshman year of high school, I think is what it was. Yeah, it was right after my freshman year of high school, so it's towards the end of the summer. When you go back down there, and my uncle calls my mom and she comes picks me up. At this point in time, she's clean, she's doing good. She's got a boyfriend or a husband back in Morristown, which is the town that I'm from. So contrary to what I wanted to do, my uncle sent me with her and I came back to Morristown. So now I'm at my sophomore year of high school, I'm starting school, but I've still got this drug habit. I'm still using home-cooked meth. So I'm staying up all night for 2 or 3, 4 days at a time. I'm going to school and I'm falling asleep in class. And it's where I kind of developed my first codependency, because I met a girl in high school and I liked her. And one of the first things that she said to me, and I don't know why she said this, she said she wouldn't be with somebody that used drugs. So I went home and I made the decision to stop using. And it worked for about 3.5 years. And I used the word codependency very, very purposely in that, because the addiction that I had with the amphetamines at that point then developed over into the relationship with her, because it was a very toxic relationship, even though it was in high school. We were both young, stupid, doing things that we shouldn't have been doing and hurting each other. So this went on all through high school, from sophomore till after the time I graduated. But I was clean and I was sober. So my senior year, I joined the Marine Corps. And right after my senior year, I went to Parris Island. When I come home from the Marine Corps, so now I've left Morristown. I've got away from these things. You know, I'm clean, I'm good, I've got a bright future ahead of me. And then I come home. When I come home, I got a job working in an automotive factory, 7 days a week, 8 to 12-hour shifts, and I developed a drinking habit. But I wasn't using hardcore drugs anymore. So I can remember getting off work, working night shift, getting off work and coming in and just, you know, starting to drink a little bit, but by the time I go back to work the next night, I've drunk so much that my manager and my boss can smell the liquor coming off of me. And this went on, give or take, about 4.5 months. And I lost a job at the automotive place. So I decided, okay, well, I'll go back to school, I'll go to college. So I went to Carson Newman University for the total of about 2 to 3 weeks. while I was also working a part-time job at a fast food restaurant. At this point in time, me and my father have now started talking again, and his habits have not left him. So the same reason that he lost custody in the first place is still playing a role in his life. But he's my daddy, and I'm still a daddy's boy, so I'm still going around, you know, and I wanna fix this relationship, and I wanna do this, and I wanna do that. Well, one night when my father goes into work, he goes in a little bit too messed up, and he's using high pressure sprayers, and he sprayed the inside of his boot with steaming hot water, and it filleted the inside of his leg. Well, when he done that, because he hurt himself at work, they drug tested him, and he failed his drug test and therefore got fired. So the response in my mind was, well, I have to take care of him. He took care of me, so I have to take care of him. So I dropped out of school, I quit my job, and I went back to the drugs that I had knew my entire childhood, and I started selling drugs again. And it kept us off the street for the time being, but about 4.5 months into it, I caught my first felony charges, which was felony possession of Schedule 2, felony possession of, I think, Schedule 3, and felony possession of legend drug. With it being my first charges, they dropped them to misdemeanors because they were all possession charges. So I did my time. After I had bonded out, I'd done my time, did the probation, whatever I had to do, and continued on. But now I still had this drug habit. So now I'm in and out of jail, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. In 2018, I got mixed in with some people whom I thought were my friends and my brothers. And they had asked me to give them a ride to go somewhere one day to do something, and I knew full well what they were doing because they told me. But I gave them the ride to the house. They went in the house, and I sat in the car, and they came back out with 3 duffel bags. And in these duffel bags, they had went into this house and stole a bunch of firearms. So about a month later, the SWAT team kicked in my mom's door, now who I'm now staying with, looking for these guns that they had stolen, and me and the 2 individuals that I was with. So when all this played out, I took my first actual felony conviction of theft over 2,500, under 2,500, under 10,000, criminal responsibility, and then a bunch of theft charges that went along with stealing the guns. And it just continued to get worse and to get worse and to get worse. Later on, after I had done that time, because it went kind of back and forth with the jail time, with the way that the state had played it out. So, done the jail time that I had to originally do. I got out on probation. I violated, went back, got out again, and then I violated and flattened my charge. So when I got out from flattening, with full intentions after doing 14 months, with full intentions to do right and to not get high and to get a job and do all these things, the test started coming again. Hardships, things that had presented themselves to me before in my life, and I constantly ran back to the comfortability of drugs or whatever the case may be. I can't remember how old I was at the time. I know it was 2019. The woman that I was with, after I had got out of jail, we were together at a house one day, and she introduced me to heroin for the first time. Now at this point, I'm already intravenously using, so now we're mixing it. So now my drug addiction just took a whole new level, even from the meth and the other things. And before I realized how addictive it was, had already been using it for about a week and a half, 2 weeks, thinking that if I just did a little bit of it, it wouldn't matter. So after about 2 weeks of using it, I started withdrawing off of it. And the withdrawals, they were bad, but they weren't really like something that would keep me from doing it again, you know, because again, I hadn't been doing much of it. So the sensation of the heroin, it fed me to want to seek it out again. And I did, and this went on for a long time. I ended up going to Texas a little bit after that, with the intentions of getting clean, getting a job, changing my life, because they say you change your people, places, and things. Change your people, places, and things. Well, I did all that. I changed my people, I changed my places, I changed my things, but I didn't change my mindset. Mm-hmm. So when I got to West Texas, I found myself around the same group of individuals that I had been around in Tennessee, doing the exact same thing that I was doing in Tennessee. Only down there, it was different because no one knew me. So now it was like I was having to prove myself all over again. So this continued to go on. I was down there for maybe 4.5, 5 months. And I can't remember the exact time frame, but somewhere after 2 months of being down there, I got caught with 1.5 grams of meth again. But again, the judicial system in Texas is a little bit different than it is in Tennessee. So I'm thinking I'm going to sit there. Pre-trial comes, they release me, I get out. And long story short, I ran back to Tennessee. And looking back now, I'm so glad that I did. Because in jumping pre-trial and coming back to Tennessee led to me coming to Knoxville to meet a friend of mine and getting left and getting stranded, right? So I was on Merchants Green. If anybody's watching is familiar with Merchants Green in Knoxville, I'm trying to call and find a way home to Morristown. I'm trying to do this and I'm trying to do that. And it's like everybody that can come to pick me up won't, but the people that can't would if they could, but they obviously can't. So I'm sitting here on the side of the road trying to get a hold of any and everybody I can. And I'm looking back now, I can see the Lord just shutting doors. No, it's not happening. No. And I remembered I had a friend that I used to work with back in Morristown when I first got out from doing my original time on my charges. His name was Roy McGee. And I had heard some rumors that he had a recovery program in Knoxville. So when my phone hit 5% and was about to die, it's like 30 degrees outside because it's in November, it's freezing cold. I called him and I told him, I said, look, and I didn't tell him I wanted help. I told him I wanted to help. It's what I told him. But the Lord works in mysterious ways because the house that he had actually rented for the recovery ministry was less than 5 minutes away from where I was on Merchants Green. And so he sends some guys to come pick me up, and with the only intentions to step into this house, to get clean, get a job, and I was leaving. I was not looking for God. I was not looking for recovery. I was not looking for a long-term faith-based facility by any means. Mm-hmm. And I stepped into the house, and it was just like this sense of love and this sense of belonging. And I know it sounds weird, but there's no other way to describe it. Yes, there was a nervousness about being in a new place with a house full of guys you don't know. But if you can deal with the nervousness of going into a jail pod with 70 guys that you don't know, then what's 12?
Right.
Right? So I stepped into it and I did it. And a spiritual or religious background is not what I come from by any means. If it didn't have something to do with money or drugs, then most of the people around me in my past life didn't really associate or accumulate to it, right? I do have some family members that I didn't really associate with too much on my mom's side of the family in the distance that, they pastor churches and they do this and they do that, but there was no direct contact there. So the church, accountability, the Spirit, these things were never introduced to me until I stepped into recovery ministry. So I remember one of the first thought processes I had when, especially getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning to do, praise and worship, and you walk into a living room of 10 guys randomly speaking in tongues and you've never been around it before. It's like, oh, what have I got myself into? Right? These dudes are crazy. Get me out of here. And but I didn't. I held tight. And I held tight not because of anything that I did or anything that I didn't do, but I held tight because I had called Roy and asked for his help, right? And Roy was my friend. So I stuck it out. So I came into recovery ministry November 23rd of 2022. I was saved 2 weeks before my birthday, which is in December 31st. And then January 1st, which would have been one day after my birthday, Roy and Pastor Brendan Horde that leads to the church that we attend baptized me in a creek in Cerebral, Tennessee in the very beginning of January.
In January.
I will never forget it because I told Roy I wanted to be baptized now that I'm saved, right? But if I do it, it's going to be in running water. And they looked at me like I'm crazy, like I was crazy, right? And I just looked at them. I said, "That's the stipulations. I'll get baptized, but I want it to be in running water." So we did it. We lost our slides, we lost our sandals, and our feet about froze off, but we done it. And I remember walking out of the river after the baptism, and now at this point in time, I've already been through inner healing, and I've already been through deliverances, and I felt weight lifted off of me, and I've felt these hardships and these hang-ups inside of me be lifted from the counseling and things of that nature. But stepping out of that river felt like I had just stepped out of a hot shower.
Wow.
Like, after you've been working all day and you feel muggy and you feel nasty, but you step out of the shower after you've cleaned yourself off and you're refreshed, and that's what it felt like. Mm-hmm. And it was just different. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I can stay here for the year now at this point, So I buckled my head down and I continued to press in and continued to push on towards the end of it. 4 months into my program, though, remember I said I had those charges that I ran from in Texas?
Yeah.
They caught up to me in Marshall County, Indiana, coming back from a fundraiser. I got pulled over for a headlight in the middle of a snowstorm, and I just happened to be the one driving the car with no license. So when the cop ran my name, I had a full extradition warrant out of Midland County, Texas for dangerous drug possession for 1.5 grams of methamphetamine. So again, I'm tripping, and I'm praying, and I'm asking God, Lord, just let me slide through one more time. Let me slide through one more time. And the cop come up to the window, and he was like, well, Mr. West, I'm sorry to inform you, but you have a warrant out of Marshall County, Texas. I said, no, I don't. Because there's no such place as Marshall County, Texas. I've never been. At this point, I feel like I can maneuver my way through this because I see he's done slipped up, right? He was like, okay, well, let me go back and check this computer system again. And he goes back and checks, and he's like, no, Midland County, Texas is where it's at. I said, okay, yeah, you got that. So I go to jail in Indiana. I do 30 days waiting on the extradition. They extradite me to Texas. Then I did 3 or 4 more months down there. And this is in the middle of my program. So now I'm back in Texas in jail. Nobody knows where I'm at except for Roy, the owner of the program, and the staff here at this program. None of my family know where I'm at because I never told them I was going to rehab to begin with. Mm-hmm. Well, they definitely don't know I'm in jail, and they definitely don't know I'm 18 hours away in jail.
Right.
So one thing comes after another, blah, blah, blah. And I go to court. The lawyer comes in, tells me how much time they're offering me. I end up taking 5 years on it, 5 years probation, deferred. So I go to court, I sign my papers, I get out. And this is something that struck me as odd because the probation office is directly behind the jail in Midland County. So when you get done and out of court and you get released, you have to report straight there. So I did that. And to this time period, everyone had said they will not file an interstate compact. It's not going to happen. So I had been praying, God, if going back to Tennessee is something that you want me to do, show me. But this can't be nothing subtle, because this is not a subtle decision. I need you to show me, and I need it to be without a doubt. And so I walk in and I tell the probation officer after he calls me back, that I'm in a recovery program. I've been there for so long. I'm this long clean, and it's this and that. Yeah, but here's the catch: it's in Tennessee. And he just kind of looked at me like I was stupid. So I told him, I said, look, I'll call the pastor and he'll validate everything that I'm saying. Now there's this little whisper in the back of my head telling me that he's not going to file this interstate compact because everybody's telling me that, right?
Right.
So he calls Roy, and Roy speaks to him, and before I left his office, not only did I have an interstate compact in my hand, but he had printed off my bus ticket and handed it to me.
Wow.
So that was the confirmation that I really needed, that ministry is where I needed to be. So I came back to Tennessee and I finished my program. I staffed on with Fountain of Hope Ministries. I'm one of the program directors here now. So in a nutshell, I get to be the guy that used to be running from probation to now I'm the one calling and getting guys out of jail, or or keeping them from going to jail, or whatever the thing may be. And even better than that, I get to watch the Lord manifest the restoration in their lives that he has in mind.
So awesome. That's so awesome. Amazing. So you're coming up on 3 years?
So November 23rd will be 3 years. That's 1 year in the program and 2 years as staff.
That's incredible. I bet 4 years ago, you couldn't see yourself sitting here today.
I would have called you crazy.
Yeah. It's so incredible. And now at the beginning you said tested. I can only imagine that through these last almost 3 years that there have been some tests in there.
Every day.
Every day, yeah. So only God, right, can give you the power to get through those.
I said by his mercy, by his grace, and for his glory.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of people, though, who feel like they're being tested right now, that don't feel like they have the power to get through, or they think, I've failed too many times, or I've done too many things, or I just don't have that strength that you have. So what could you say to them that would help encourage them or give them hope?
Paul said, rejoice always in the trials and tribulations, for they'll produce endurance, character, and hope. And the Bible teaches us very clearly that it's about our weakness that he is made strong. So the best advice that I can give is, number one, don't give up on yourself, but seek the Lord in everything that you do. Submit to his will, and just let him use you and work in you, through you, and on you. And as he does that, you'll start seeing these tests. It'll start to shift. It'll start. There's no way really to describe it, but except to maybe experience it. But submission to the Lord, and don't give up.
That's good. I want to ask you about love, because I think that our goal of this series is so that people know that no matter what they've done, no matter how far they've run, it's never too late, because they are loved by the Father who created them. And so I think, though, the problem is that in the world that we live in and in society, we use love to mean a particular thing, right? Like we love football and hot dogs, pizza, whatever that may be, right? But we don't really know what true, genuine love is. And so I always ask everyone, when you were in that brokenness, when you were in addiction, when you were in that codependent relationship, when you were in prison, whatever that was, what did you think that love was? And then today, now that you know what genuine love is, how would you describe it differently?
So back then, it would probably be a more physical aspect, right? Especially coming from the abandonment issues and the relationships and the things of this nature. So feeling love out of a manipulated standpoint of physicality, I guess would be how you would say it, or even coming from the lifestyle that I lived, a brother showing you love by giving you something to get on your feet, when in all reality they're doing is sending you back to jail or prison, or giving you something that's going to kill you, and it's not love. So one thing that has transpired and changed is that, you know, love is an action word, and you can tell me all day long that you love me, but your actions will show that. And it's more than just physical touch or words, you know. I hold my brothers in the program accountable, and that's a source of love, right? And they hold me accountable. Being there to support them in their times of need. And sometimes that's a little harder than others, right? Because we have to sacrifice ourselves. When the Bible said there's no greater love than this, that he that laid out his life for a friend. And there's so many dimensions to that. But the realization that the things that happened before that led us to jail or prison or to the violence for somebody, you know, these aren't acts of love. What are we willing to give up for other people?
That's good. 'Cause God gave everything, didn't he?
He did.
He did. And when we didn't deserve it, when we didn't believe it, when we didn't accept it, he still sent his son to die for us and take that ultimate punishment for our sin, and while we were still sinners, right?
Yeah.
And it's just that mercy and that grace just amazed me. So that's just, I love seeing where you were and where you are today. And it's such an awesome picture of, like, there's nothing too broken, right? That God can't fix and use. Like, he's using you to reach others who are in those tough situations. He's using you to bring others out of addiction and out of brokenness, and just restoring them to their Father and seeing redemption in their lives. And I'm sure at one time you thought there's no way he could use you, and yet here he is using you. And so I love how God doesn't need us to be perfect, right? He just needs us to take that step of obedience and trust him. And so your story is just a perfect picture of that. And so I'm grateful that you were willing to share that and open up. Is there anything else that we didn't ask you, or anything else that you wanted to add or say?
No, I think that's about it.
Okay, well, thank you. And I look forward to seeing what the Lord does in your life through you, through the Fountain of Hope ministry, through the men that you get to teach and encourage every single day. I know God has big plans. So thank you for letting us be a little part of it, and just for sharing that encouragement for those who are watching. We appreciate it.
Thank you.